Hello there, Outliers. It's Niiamah Ashong here, and welcome to the Outliers Edge podcast on the Outliers Edge podcast network. It is amazing it's an amazing and honor to be able to spend time with you here. And today, we're bringing on an outlier who I also consider to be quite amazing. Her name is Shari Balouchi. Shari, it's thanks for making the time for this here. I'm really excited to dive into both your story, but like really how you're playing as an outlier right now.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here. One of the things we do here is like we look to see we like to bring on people who are playing a big game in the way that they choose to, and to see like the rules of the game that they've chosen and how they've gone about it. If you're
I
good
love
with
that.
it, what I like to do is share a bit of how I've experienced you so far. That's how I like to
Yeah,
start my conversations, and then I want to give you an opportunity to give context to outliers about the game you're playing. Does that sound good?
I love that.
All right, cool. So, sorry for me here. One of the things I have to slow down. I always want to like rush in. So, outliers, y'all have listened to me like do this, and I'll say something like I don't know what I want to say beforehand. And the reason I say that is so I can actually slow myself down because I feel so smooth, and then I'm like, okay, I have to break it up a little bit. But that's actually the truth. This is why I do it to ground myself in, make sure we have a real conversation.
Yeah.
So sorry, I will say this. I was legitimately excited that to see you on my calendar for today. I like we've gotten a chance to connect beforehand. And what I get about you is that like you bring integrity in the things that you do. Right. You're like there's a thoughtfulness in what you do, but the thoughtfulness for me isn't like it's 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 an intentionality that gets placed backed with like I want to say a deep knowing, but like in the context of the kind of conversations I have, that kind of comes off as like intuition. What I actually
Mhm.
mean is like actual experience and being able to like recognize and play from that place. Um, I find that you are like you're level headed in what you do, but at the same time, like you're also like expansive and open to things coming to life. And I guess at the end of the day, what I feel is like when I spend time with you, visions can become reality. And that's important for me. So thank you for being you. Thank you for showing up in this way. Um, and yeah, let's continue on from there. But I appreciate you.
Thank you for those reflections.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sorry, that's how I'm seeing you right now in this moment here. Um, I'd love for you to give Outliers a chance to get some context about you. Tell us about the game you're playing. Tell us about the mission that you're on. Like, how are you like being an outlier out in the world? And let's connect with you from that level.
Yeah. I know we were just chatting before this conversation that I'm kind of in a reimagining period where I've been a business coach for the last several years, and now I'm looking at expanding into what it means not just to create a healthy, sustainable business, but helping people create healthier workplaces as well from an organizational perspective. And so for me, what is radical about that? I mean, inherently, I think trying to blend well being into an environment that is inherently capitalist, that is inherently designed to extract a lot of well being, I think is pretty an outlier game in that way. Um, but I think also just the way that I want to go about that is also different. I think the way the current prescription, right, that's out there is work life balance, right? It is having a life outside of work. It is about having boundaries, turning off notifications, leaving work at work, right? Those are kind of the prescriptions that we get. I think there are a lot of layers beyond that that we need to address, especially for people of color, especially for people with different marginalized identities, right? Being physically unplugged is not enough to shut the brain down and all of the anxiety and wellness. And I was reading this book last night. Okay, so this is the guy who did the strengths finder assessment, which is one of the big ones in the career field. He writes about the five essential elements of well-being, and career well-being is one of them, and there's like spiritual, mental, emotional, all of those. And my mind was like, I've been in this work, I really believe in it, but what was really cool that I read last night was that the career well-being component is like twice as important as the other ones, because people who have high levels of career well-being tend to thrive in all the other areas. And so for me, the way I was thinking about it without all of the data and research and insight was like, we spend minimum 40 hours per week at our workplace, right? If you're an entrepreneur, maybe more, maybe less, depending on the season, but minimum 40 hours. Like that's a lot of time. And so if you're stressed out or not feeling great during that time, that's a large portion of your life that you're just putting on hold to live the rest of your life in those other hours. And so for me, like, yeah, it's not a radical idea, wellness at work or, you know, having balance as an entrepreneur, but like figuring out what that is for you and figuring out how to do that within a world where we have to have money to live, where like all of the benefits of being a human, right? In the US, health insurance, benefits, retirement, all of those things are so closely tied to our employer. Like it is really radical.
I found myself leaning in when you're sharing the current status quo. Like I found myself like really interested in being like, oh, I like I'm very curious about the different world that you're creating. And sometimes I appreciate you bringing like you're in the reimagining of things. Um, what's coming for me is oftentimes I used to be in this space of like, what's your bigger mission? And it comes down to like, what's the world that we're co-creating together? And in you describing it in that way with the status quo and what could be possible, I just felt myself really coming alive. So I just want to make sure I shared that back there. And it also just gave a lot of space. Like I was just like deeply and like enthralled in. And Outliers, I'm going to invite you if there's something that you are bringing out to the world for the first time. See how did that framing impact you? This is a tool that we can call like the current versus like the possibility. And I would invite you to play around with the current versus possibility option for yourself and see like, hey, what if we were able to frame it in this way? Because it did give a great juxtaposition of it all. So I just wanted to put that. It even leads me to be even more curious, by the way, because I'm like, how different is what you're creating from what I already know? You know,
Mm,
what do you get when I share that back to you, Shari? Like, I'd be curious if anything comes of that. I'm very reflective, by the way. Heads up.
yeah. It makes sense. It's like
Yeah,
born coach, right?
yeah.
Um, I did because this is so new, I don't have like a pre-crafted elevator pitch that where I did that strategically, but I think when you know i'm I'm very introverted. Like you said, I'm very reflective. I live in my head a lot. And so when I'm trying to bring things out of my head, a lot of times I have to like do the contrast because I'm like, people aren't following what's in my head. I have to share where this is coming from. And so I think that's where the contrast is for me. And I think one of my like both gifts and curses and burdens is like I can really see what's not working really well. And that is my point of frustration and in my daily life is I can see what's not working. And not only can I see what's not working, I can also see ways that we can just make it work better. And for me, I get frustrated in that, like, isn't it obvious? Why aren't we doing the obvious? Because when you say, like, oh, I'm interested in what you're doing, that's so radically different, it's like really simple shit. Are we allowed to curse on this
Real
podcast?
out. We
Okay.
we the powers that be have said that we shall allow it. Like, it's an interesting thing. Sorry, like we were talking earlier about like how does this conversation go? And generally speaking, I'm like, this is just a model of how people are outliers, and like what we
Mm,
do is like what we talk about, but underneath all of it is who we be. This is a
yeah.
being podcast, like, and that's why like I like when I mess like I can tell when I mess up when we only talk about what we do. All I care about is who we be. And this is why, like we were talking earlier
Mm.
about like what's a great takeaway for people. I'm like, I don't know. People always get something different from here. Like I can't direct them in it because who we be is what's really being
Mm.
showcased. So if this is who you are, thank you. If that leads to your well-being, then I'll bring it. That's how I feel.
Well, I mean, I did trademark whole ass human, so we know cursing is part of my brand a little bit,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to be
Yeah.
respectful of your space. But
Well,
yeah,
thank
like
you. Thank you.
I
Then,
feel
then play
like
full out. That would be respectful of my space. Play full out. We're good.
Yeah, so essentially I feel like sometimes those things are the simple things, but for some reason, whether it's, our own egos wanting to find complex solutions so we can, prop up our egos and say we came up with this elaborate solution, or whether it's just like people have gifting in certain areas, is that this is an area that people don't have very good sight into. Like, I think it's really the simple stuff. And I swear, if you listen in on my one on one coaching sessions, we are talking about really like simple foundational things. We're often very rarely coming up with like groundbreaking strategies that no one's ever thought of. It's just that combination aligning with your own desires and strengths makes it radical, right? Like sometimes you feel like you're going through a really complex emotion or spiral in your business, and you're like, okay, I need to figure out what my message is, or how I'm going to market this, or what's my innovative edge, right? And it's like, maybe your ass needs to go take a walk outside, clear your head, get out of your head. And then when you sit back down, you have a lot more creativity and clarity, right? And that's not radical. Like, go take a walk is not radical. And it's not always the solution, but knowing like, oh, you're in your head about this, that's what's getting in the way. It's not the actual issue that you think it is. Your messaging is not a problem. It's actually that you're overthinking your messaging, right? And you're not tapped into your gifts. Like, those are the kinds of things. And I think with wellness, and well-being, whether it's in the workplace or in your business as an entrepreneur. And I think those two things are very connected, because the majority of us have come from a traditional workplace. I have a nonprofit background. I know you have a tech background. We were conditioned in different ways in what an employee looks like. And so when we enter entrepreneurship, we're going to bring a lot of those practices, whether it's because those are what we're used to, or we're swinging the other way and trying to create the complete opposite because we hated it, right? But I think that's the reason a lot of people burn out early on in entrepreneurship, is you don't have those boundaries, you have to self-define, and we end up working through lunch, not taking proper meal breaks, even though there's no reason we can't. And so I think that those conversations are important, because it's simple, but we need reminders of the simple, right? It's not that we don't know what to do, but we need that reinforcement. Reminders are helpful. They talk about like, why do you need to do certain inner work every day? And there's a quote that's like, well, why do you shower every day? Like, it's the hygiene of it. It's the maintenance of it that's important. It's not you shower once and you're clean for life. It's the same thing with our simple well-being practices. It's like, I can't take care of myself one day, make sure that I've drank water and eaten well and taken my breaks and nurtured my creativity, and then the rest of the week I can burn myself to the ground.
And then you're done, right? Like check the box. I checked the box once, we're good. There's a couple different things in what you said that I want to just slow down on real quick. One of them is, and I think this is some of the things I was alluding to earlier, but I think you're capturing it here. You live in the world of the simplicity after complexity.
Yeah.
And I was actually just having a conversation with someone the other day, and he showed like a graph, and it was like a bell curve, and it was basically like most people live like there's like a simple version where people are like, to me, I don't call it simple, I call it basic,
Yeah.
like you basic, right?
Yeah.
But then and then they get into all these complexities, like, no, I'm this complex little like human. And then you get on the other side, you're like, actually, I'm really, really simple. I just want like this is how I like my life to be, you
Yeah.
know? And I think there's something to say to that, because what I get about you is that you've gotten through the mastery of the complexity such that you're able to see like the actual signal from the noise, right? You're able to see what's the truth in the middle of all this other data. And as such for you, I think that like if I'm getting you right, you've seen so much, you understand the complexity so much there that you're able to like put it on a filter and say, this is what the actual needle mover is. Yes, maybe you need your messaging out there, but perhaps the needle mover of your messaging isn't the words. It's the
Correct.
fact that you're like all up in your head. So no one wants to even spend time like energetically is not coming across. And
Right.
you might say, what does it mean to be energetically coming across? It's like you don't even sound enthused about this. Like,
Right.
why on earth would I want to spend any more of my time listening to this? Because you yourself aren't sold on it. Go for a walk, come back in, and let me know like what would be awesome about it, right?
Hmm.
Am I playing a little bit more in like it's like am I playing in the space that you play in? Is this in alignment with the way that you look at things, the way you see things?
I definitely didn't have the self-observation skills to be able to put it in those terms. But yes, that is exactly what's happening is I I do have a life that's had to hold a lot of complexity, and the way that you, I'm an observer, I make connections, my brain is constantly firing connections and seeing patterns, and so I think yeah, it makes sense that then it becomes very easy for me to filter because it's computing that in a really rapid manner.
Oh, absolutely. Like, so there's a couple different things. One of them, a lot of people say like I'm intuitive, and I believe in intuition, but I also like I worked as an actuarial consultant for like almost a decade, you know.
Yeah.
Then I did like culture, then I did it in tech, and then I went to coaching. Like it's like I get to play in like, you know, logic
Yeah.
and, you know, all that a lot. And, you know, one of the things about intuition for me is I'm like it was just described as advanced pattern recognition, you know. I felt
Yeah.
like that was like it's like, oh, intuitively this is wrong. I don't know why. It's like, oh, because you may not know that you know the pattern, but you
Yes.
do. And I even
Yes.
think about like coaching, like the deep, powerful, transformative coaching. I was like, this could be replaced by AI one day if they could understand like what like a 0.05% dilation in the eye means, or like when you're
Yeah.
talking to someone, they look away. Like I think that there's a part of my brain that understands that, like, oh, I just lost the person there. I don't know why I lost them, but I
Mm-hmm.
can tell that whatever felt like connection was broken here. And it's because
Mm.
of XYZ, because I know the pattern of when someone's in like enraptured in a
Yeah.
conversation versus like
Yes.
I'm somewhere else there. So let me just check in. Let me bounce. We'll go back into the well-being for a bit here, but I love I love shining a light on people's outlier advantage, you know, and
Mm.
like as you're talking about like, hey, this is so simple. Like I can't believe people don't see it. I'm like, sorry, that's why they pay you what they pay you.
Yeah.
You know, like it is for that reason that like people are like, oh, that thing that I couldn't even see, that was a
Yeah.
blind spot to me. You're like, this is like the easiest thing out here. Just boom, you make this change, you're good. Go for your walk. You know, let me pause. Let me check in with you here, and then we'll get back into like a little bit deeper on it. But yeah, I'm seeing your outlier advantage, and I'm like, I want to speak to it.
No, I like that. I really struggle with naming that because like you said, I experience it in an intuitive manner. And so, and because I did not go through like formal, education to learn a lot of what I have about marketing and business and coaching, it came through life experience.
Lovely,
And when I go back and do fill in gaps and like, go through courses and stuff, I learned that what I'm doing through other ways that I've gained the knowledge is the same thing that they are teaching people how to gain the skills in. And it can be difficult for my brain to reconcile those two things and be like, how did I acquire this?
oh, because you lived it, you went out and did it. Like this is fun for me here because I think like, you know, I think this is where like when you talk about like, hey, this is how the status quo is, and it's the other thing here. Like I think that's why it was so captivating for me because it's like you have to have experience to speak to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other people are repeating what other people say. You know what I'm saying? They're like, whereas I'm hearing you and
Mm-hmm.
I'm experiencing you in like, this is my actual experience of it here. Most other
Mm-hmm.
people are going to go down, they're going to learn from like the gurus in this space, and they're going to tell you it's about. And you just listed out all the things that I think all like as outliers and other people like we've heard, like this is what you got to do. And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, and that might just be good copy, that might just be good marketing, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, but it is also just like for those of us that are in the struggle and we're like, but why isn't this working or why doesn't this resonate? It's very nice and refreshing to be like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What when you were talking, this is like one of the things that came for me was when I was working in uh company culture. I was involved with diversity and inclusion, like supporting the diversity and inclusion affinity groups.
Mm-hmm.
I had run away from diversity and inclusion for most of my career. I
Makes
kept getting
sense.
involved in it. Yeah, but I am one of the only black people here,
Right.
you know, and I don't want you to think of me as a black person because if that happens, then you're going to start limiting my options
Right.
because clearly this is not an environment where people like me thrive. Otherwise,
Yeah.
there'll be more. Right,
Right.
that's the simplicity after the complexity is like if we could be successful here, we would be here. You
Right.
know, and
Hmm.
it's not to say that's like a blanket statement, but
No, no,
like
no. I feel
that,
you.
yeah. And I what it reminds me of when you talk about well-being in this way is I had a hard time identifying with diversity and inclusion in the corporate setting because it actually just reminded me of when I was in college, where it's like people are like, well, why don't you go live in like the black dorm? I was like, I just came to a place here and like the whole world is supposed to be integrated. I'm not going to go and self segregate. And when I think about diversity and inclusion in the workplace, it is very much like, oh, you're black. You should go hang out with the black people. Oh, you're Asian. You should go hang out with Asian. Like, I'm
What do
like,
you do if you're the only one?
what like ask that
Or
question.
there's
Ask that
two of
one.
you?
Keep going. Keep going. Keep
And
going.
and
You,
what do
you
you do if the other person who is non-white in the building is Latino or Asian and you actually don't share that much culturally in common with them?
yeah. Yeah. I think that's the thing. It's to the reason that that framing never really worked for me is I'm like because it's not how I identify myself,
You
and
also aren't the one who needs the DEI work.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm just gonna sidestep that
No, I
whole
love that.
tangent.
I love that though. But I hear that with you in the wellness, right? I
Mm,
hear that element of that there
yes.
too, where
Yes.
it's like people are trying to solve it, but they're missing out. Like they're missing on like the core element of like what is actually leading to
Yeah.
like a place where well-being is not integrated into the workplace as it is.
Correct.
What is making this so urgent to actually even address? I feel like that's a little bit more where like I feel like you're in
Mm.
that world. Tell me about it. Am I off about that or
No, I love that analogy. Like, I know a lot of people have like become fatigued with the term work-life balance and they're moving towards terms like work-life harmony and, just playing with the language to see what feels good. And, you know, um, Emily Nagoski and her sister wrote like a book on burnout, and there's so much literature out there about burnout. And I think as an entrepreneur, what we definitely learn about burnout is it is not about the literal hours that you work or the number of tasks on your plate. It is about how you feel in relationship to those tasks, right? And so you may have been working 40 hours a week in a job that you didn't really like, or for a supervisor who micromanaged you, did not give you room to grow and get creative. And yet, if you spend that same 40 hours, maybe even 50 hours in your own business, in your gifting, you feel radically different about the hours you pour in. And so burnout is not necessarily like a one-to-one correlation of you have this many tasks, your to-do list is too long, you need to offload your plate. It is also about what is the level of fulfillment, what is the energetic exchange that you're getting from the work that you're pouring in, right? It's the reason that some people can be full-time stay-at-home parents and be really fulfilled by that, and other people are like, shoot me now, I need to go back to work so I can actually be a good present parent and not be with my kids 24/7 because that's a lot on their nervous systems. Like we all have these different individual needs of what makes us feel our most well. And there's not a lot of room for that nuance in the current structures we have.
you brought up burnout right now, and for some reason, the way that this conversation is going, it made me think of burn in. I think it's like, and I'd be really curious about that. Maybe it's something you can coin at some point, but it's like I get burnout, right? But like at the same time, as a coach, I think back to how often I would go and be like, what would really light you up? What makes you on fire? You
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah.
And it's like we're still talking about the burning here, right?
Mm,
But there's something about this here where it's like some part of it leads to burnt out. I'm curious about like when you have something that's burning, what would lead to like a burn in where you're like, I can do this forever, you know?
mm,
Because we do use language that
yeah.
in that kind of context. And I
Yeah.
had a time where I was my daughter. I love my daughter. but there was a time where I had to work half days to spend
Hmm.
time with her, like during the work hours. I'm like, I can
Hmm.
spend time with you all the time, but
Hmm.
during like between 12 and 4,
Hmm.
I just like I feel like I got to be doing something
Hmm.
else, you
Hmm.
know? So it
Yeah.
wasn't even like spending time with her. It was like there was some nuance of that that no longer
Yeah.
led to burning, you
Hmm.
know. And
Hmm.
I like there's something. By the way, I'm trying to make fetch happen right now.
I was
I
gonna
don't
let you
mind it.
have that one.
Yeah, I don't mind. I'm gonna play it in there. I'm gonna play it. But yeah, just curious for you. Like there's something there. Like you see a simplicity after the complexity, you know. And I kind of want to bring that in where I'm like, hmm, we talk about this stuff. We use the same types of language, but
Hmm.
there's some things that like seems to like get us fired up, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
something else that just like seems to like reduce us to ashes. And I mean that distinction for me, that whatever the nuance there,
Yeah.
I think would be really interesting to understand.
Something that I feel like has really like helped me be more at peace with like the radical amount of changes that we've been experiencing as a society like the last several years, and just like navigating the different ebbs and flows of business and life is like really shifting to a season oriented mindset and really like embracing the seasonality of a lot of different things. um I know that this is like big in the women's world, and like I kind of entered through like the women's entrepreneurship group when I entered the online space. And so I was exposed to a lot of like information about like cycle syncing and like basically the women's, energy system not working on a 24-hour cycle. But I think, men have their own cycles too, as individuals, right? It's not just our energy cycles, but it's also like our needs in different seasons of life. And I think that deeply impacts that burn in burnout ratio that you were talking about. Is there are seasons where it feels good to work more hours. There are seasons where it feels good to work less hours. There are seasons where you want to be more involved in your child's life, or you have to, be a caregiver. And there are seasons where you might want to nurture more of one part of yourself. Like, things aren't as constant as our brain craves them to be, right? And so we do crave routine, especially since there's so much more uncertainty that we're having to tolerate on a daily basis. But we're fighting against a lot of our own like ebbs and flows of desire and needs. And I think that's why learning the skills to like be able to tune into your needs and well-being, right, is so powerful, because then you don't have to use someone else's model because their cycle, they might be in a different season than you, right? And that's where we get into a lot of the comparison trap. Is like they're in a season where they're doing XYZ and it feels good to them, and you try and replicate their strategy, but you're in a radically different season with different resources. It's going to feel horrible to you. And so like coaching is helpful because you have someone who can help you, match your seasons and your skill sets to that. But like the same things in different contexts do different things, right? I can use scissors to open up one packet, and I can use scissors to try and cut my curtain, and it's not as effective. Like the same tools in different contexts just don't have the same results. And so just figuring out what that fit is for us, I think, is really, really important.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate this conversation. It's cool to spend time with someone who sees the same world that I do, but is able to see it from a very different lens, you know.
Mm.
And I think that like I can get how your clients get benefit from being able to like be in this space and reimagine even what their work life looks like, what their what their well-being looks like here, from more of this integrated place. And it's interesting. It does. I mentioned earlier, like challenging the status quo, but it just feels like just choosing a different definition of truth that's also available. It's like it's here.
Yeah.
We can. How do we want to how do we want to see it, and what's resonating at its core? And I think you've done like a fantastic job with that. Sorry, we're gonna start wrapping up the conversation here in a bit. I want to check in and see
Yeah.
what's something that you would love for outliers to to take away from this conversation. And here's the thing: if there's something that was like really important that we're like, yo, we didn't talk about this, right? I trust you to see like I just trust the simplicity that you have to be like, we need to talk about this here, and we have a little bit of time to give some space to that. But if you're like,
Yeah.
no, I think we're in good shape, let us know like what a takeaway you'd like us to leave here with.
I think, we talked about a lot of things generally, but I think the the power for a lot of us, especially since all of this tends to happen behind the scenes in private conversations and private moments, would be maybe if we could share some examples of what it looked like for each of us to have to recalibrate around that, whether it's in business or elsewhere, is like what was a season where we were not able to be in harmony with our own levels of wellness or well-being at work, and how did we recalibrate and find that, or did we, or are we still like maybe just doing a little snapshot, because I
Let's
think
do
being
it.
able
Let's
to
do it.
see that is really useful.
I call that making it real. Yeah, like so, like I like, all right, cool. I hear about the like, I'm like, I hear about the seasons here, Sherry. Like, make it real for me. Like, tell me
Yeah.
about this shit. Yeah. So,
Yeah, you said you wanted to like explore the edge, right? So
yeah,
I think it would be interesting for your people even to get to hear like what is an edge that you've had to work in that area.
yeah. I think I'll answer this one first. There's some components of this here. Let's frame this up here. So this is we're looking at this through the lens of the well-being and um I honestly the biggest one for me likely was the shift to like being with my daughter halftime. And it was really interesting because I had said that I wanted to uh have like a typical lifestyle entrepreneur kind of life where I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I want to be working half days. I want to be able to
Mm-hmm.
like, have the afternoons off, so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. And I got what I asked for. I just wasn't more specific about it, you know? And
Yeah.
so yeah, that was a challenging time. I was doing all my work between 9 and 12 in the I had like 3 hours of work time a day. I was like it made everything really stressful for me because I was like, I can only choose one strategy, and I have
Mm-hmm.
to like it has to work because my goal here is to create enough revenue to go and like bring in someone really qualified to go spend time with my daughter. And then like, as that was happening, it was still like the components were like, what is that strategy? Like I
Mm-hmm.
picked a strategy. It
Mm-hmm.
is working to some extent, not working to the, and I don't, and it's not energizing me enough to do it this way
Yeah.
to keep going. So I spent about like 2, 3 months going through that path. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Walked away from it. And then actually came back to it. So I was actually like spending my time making podcasts during that time. And
I was gonna say, do you want to like ground us in like what strategy you were picking and what wasn't
yeah,
feeling
yeah.
good?
So it was I was creating podcasts and meeting people on podcasts, similar to like
Okay.
like what I do now.
Mm-hmm.
And uh there was actually one part of it that was really fun. Like I was getting a chance to meet people. Um, I think the thing that was missing for me, and it's still something I haven't like fully gotten in, was
Mm-hmm.
like the relationship building. So I was getting
Mm-hmm.
some conversations in, um, but I felt the component of a podcast that was hard for me, and this I'm enjoying this part of the conversation is that like if I'm it's not often that I get to like actually get into the depth of a conversation with someone. And
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting because I know that I lead the conversation. So it's like, couldn't you make it more depthful? I think that over time, I became
Mm-hmm.
I one got out of practice, and two, I'm meeting a lot of people for the first time, and so it's
Mm-hmm.
like, are they willing to go there? And like
Mm-hmm.
someone being open to go in there and being willing
Mm-hmm.
to go there are
Mm-hmm.
different. Like you invited yourself into this part of the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that to me is part of the difference there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I did it, and I think that I came back to it eventually because I was like, I think I'm just not doing it right, as in
Mm-hmm.
like I'm meeting a lot of people, we're getting these episodes out there, but I thought I was doing all in, and I was
Mm.
still like I was having a lot of conversations, but there's a lot of things that has to happen afterwards. We're getting like
Yeah.
um And that's just to get the podcast out, not even to like
Right.
deepen the relationship, create partnerships, like bring
Hmm.
people into my world, so on and so forth. So that ended up being it was just really hard. It was really hard. Um, Interestingly enough, what I ended up doing, it was I'm actually glad for this reflection here. I actually like just focused on starting to make like a product where I was just like, I know what I need to create
Hmm.
each week to be
Hmm.
able to make to get like the coverage,
Hmm.
you know, and then I went out and I created it, you know, and that's what started to change things around where it's just like,
Will you
yeah,
get a little bit more specific? Because I think you lost me a little bit.
yeah. So I knew what I needed to create financially each week to be able to hire someone at the level that I wanted to be and with the number of hours that I wanted to have with my daughter. Right, she's
Got it.
precious to
Okay.
me, you know,
Yeah.
um, and so what ended up happening was that it went from like I'm just gonna do stuff to like here goes where we're driving to. What am I putting out into the world in that way? Um, so that was just I mean my daughter's only like 16, 17 months old right now. So actually it
Oh
was a
my
year ago.
goodness.
It was a year ago because it like the
Oh, I
transition happened
love
like right
this.
on my birthday. You know, like it was like my
Hmm.
birthday and like my birthday just passed a couple of days ago at the time of this recording. So like I looked at it, I'm like this was a big it was a big year. There was a lot going in
Yeah.
that year. So yeah, I would say like I'm still like in the midst of this season right here, right? Because
Yeah.
things are still fleshing themselves out. Um, I'm used to doing things with people, not just for them or like
Hmm.
talking like it's like I'm just like good, really like high level team that can like we can just run together with, you
Yeah.
know. And it's like okay, everything that comes in, if I can't think about every way if it's gonna get done, it may not get done. So I still
Yeah.
feel like I'm in that season.
Hmm.
I like there are wins that happen, but like
Yeah.
there's things where I'm like, oh, I do miss like the ease of just like having an idea and then
Hmm.
running with it or like the flow of like oh I've kept my email list very active like even if no one's listening
Yes.
like 2 or 3 times a week you're getting an email from me so if I feel like
Hmm.
tossing something out
Yeah.
there's already something there so yeah you're like right now I would say I'm like in that mix right now
Yeah.
um trying to recalibrate and still looking to like make the most of this season
Hmm.
but to find like what's the path toward a brand new season and
Hmm.
that's where I'm at that's how
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that I think that's how I'm going to answer this question right now I'm open for more questions but I think that this is like the complete answer as of right now for
No,
this.
it is. And I love that you mentioned that you're still in it because I think something that happens a lot in our space with the marketing is we talk about it when we're on the other side, far removed from it. And when we have that hindsight or when we're not in the position, it's hard to describe like the level of intensity that it was. And not that anyone owes you like the full, ins and outs of their hardship, but I think it can be, it can make you feel wrong if you're in that season and it's taken more than 3 months or 2 weeks, right? It makes it seem like change happens really, really fast. And this industry is really notorious for like not setting good expectations about what it really takes to move through something that's sustainable. And so I think what I heard in your example is like the iterative process of it, right? It's like there was a really painful couple months where it was not working, but you had to keep working. You couldn't just be like, not working, gonna stop doing everything, right? You have to
Hmm.
like live in that in between space for a little while while you
I
come
think
up with
there's a
what's
lot of
next.
yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of I was thinking about this the other day when it comes to this podcast, like because I while I'm reflective out there, I don't hide what's happening here, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I volunteer it, sometimes like you do you invite it in, and so I'll share it. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, in a way here, I am actually documenting what's happening on the real time. Like
Yeah.
it like here. I'm not it's not like a diary of like, here goes all the things
Right.
that didn't work today. Like it's not that.
No.
It's not even just documenting my process. It's like, here goes what's working. This is like this is what I'm trying to figure out as I'm trying to figure it out. Here goes how I'm feeling around it.
Yeah.
Like so on and so forth. Because I've been doing this game for a while. I've
Yeah.
made a whole lot of content. There's lots of
Mm-hmm.
videos. You can find me out there. I'm prolific, and I have no problem saying that. I don't remember all the things I said 5 years ago, and I can't go like. And even now, I'm trying to tap back into that energy of like,
Yeah.
wow, I was a movement leader. I was out there
Yeah.
doing da 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 da. I'm like, all right, let me get back into movement leader energy. I'm like, whoa, it's like, where is it? Where'd it go? Like, I was doing this for years and it felt that, we talked about like becoming a coach before 2020. I'm like, before
Mm-hmm.
2020, that energy was there.
Yeah.
2020 happened. Lots of different things happened during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, there's too
Mm-hmm.
many variables for me to know like what the one thing was.
I
But
heard that.
yeah, but I'm like, oh, I think a part of me realized I'm like, I can't really go back to speak to how it felt there because
Right.
at least for me,
You're in a different
once
space now.
once once you're in a different space, you look at it differently. Like I'm like, there's some things that
Absolutely.
suck, you
Yeah.
know. It's not going to stop me, but like,
Right.
it's not like,
You got better.
yeah, exactly. And I will pause there for now. I like if you have another question, I want to bring it in. The
No.
reason I'm pausing it is more because sometimes as I keep talking, I'll accidentally take myself out of the pain. Like I'm an NES 7. So
Mm.
so I have to like actively
Yeah.
work to stay in pain.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and so I don't want to lose the opportunity for depth here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you have another question, I'm in with it. Otherwise,
No,
I'm
I
gonna
think
toss it
that
back your way.
no, I think that was a great walkthrough. And yeah, I think it might be interesting to even potentially like do a follow-up and check in and see like where are you at 6 months from now?
Yeah, and like, look, Shari, like we don't have to act on this, but I'll say it right now, which is like, hey, if we ever wanted to like bring something together and like I'm gonna follow up. I'll follow up in this way, and I want to hear a little bit from you. Um, but what I'm realizing is that like I enjoy the podcast because I like to get to meet people, but like I love working with people. Like I love that component. So like this iteration's
Absolutely.
coming through. Right now, you and we're talking on the podcast like flow of my world, right? But
Yeah.
like what I'm really excited about is I'm like, clearly I'm willing to spend hours with people that I've just met,
Yeah.
and just like and go in and be like, I'm making you clips, I'm doing this, like do a lot like so
Yeah.
I know that I've learned I will do that.
Yeah.
I have no problem reaching out to people, so on and so forth. Great.
Yeah.
If I really wanted to be a pure podcaster, I think I would be like so fulfilled. But like this is an in order to. And so the
Yes.
question becomes, well, in order to what? And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I really just want to have a community of awesome people that like I can randomly call or we can randomly talk and we can share what we're working on and we can so on and so forth. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, so now I'm finally building that. This is where the reimagine is coming. Now I'm finally building that. So I'm looking forward to an opportunity for us or to like co-host an experience inside of the community and to give
Yeah.
outliers instead of a chance of just listening to it for them to be able to come into the space and be like, hey,
Mm.
come have this conversation. Let's talk about
Yeah.
what season you're in. Let's go through the well-being together. Let's ask Shari, like, I have my questions based on what I'm dealing with right now,
Yeah.
but like give them an opportunity to ask you questions like
Yeah.
that. Like, I'm like, that could be really, really exciting. Not that it could be like that would be,
Yeah,
and so I just
absolutely. I
putting
know
that
we
in this
both
space.
identify as being like more coach than teacher, so it's
Yeah.
often easier to have something to interact with. And
Yes.
yeah, I definitely resonate
Mm,
with that.
mm.
So is there a closing question you want to ask me?
Yes. I have a few. Uh,
Always.
so look, here goes the thing I would ask you. I would ask you what season you're in right now.
Mhm.
I think it'd be good to give us a chance to like both be in that exchange.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to ask you like just three quick questions afterwards.
Okay.
So tell me about the season you're in. Let's make that real here from that perspective.
Season I am in is, if we're going to use Phoenix burning analogies,
Mm,
right? Is like I had been in the ashes for probably about like a year, year and a half. Like this time last year, my life was completely falling apart in a lot of ways. And the last episode of my podcast before I pause is sharing a good portion of that. So if you're interested, I'm sure we'll link to Success for Whole Ass Humans. You can listen to the all the shit that kind of started to hit the fan, and to the degree that I was able to, because it was, a lot about family members, so not all my story to tell, but to the degree that I'm able to share, I share it pretty rawly in that episode. So, and that was right before I decided to go back to work full time as well in a traditional role. So now I am definitely in a much more stable season. The external factors, like, a lot of what we've been talking about are like internal experiences. And some of that, with what you shared about your daughter, is like external. I think I was going through a lot of external, which then impacted the internal. And it was almost like, a big part of the space that I'm trying to play in with my work is really separating well-being from mindset, because mindset is such a like priority in the coaching space, and as it should be. Like, mindset is tremendously important, but mindset doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Your well-being has to do with a lot of core needs, and I was in a space where a lot of my core needs were like, it was a struggle to just meet a lot of the core needs. And so I've been in like a very survival mode brain. And so I think what I heard in your story, and something that I try to practice a lot, is like intentionally letting balls drop. I think it's impossible to be a high performer human in this world and not let balls drop. But I think my way of like gaming the system is choosing which balls you're letting drop, what you're putting on the back burner. Everything cannot be on the front burner. That is impossible. The standard is not possible. Sorry, perfectionists. Sorry, previous me. Like, it's not possible. So you have to decide what's going on the front, what's going in the back, what you're putting in the oven and going to take out later, what's going to stay in the fridge and have to like defrost, like all of those decisions. And so I feel like I have been intentionally backburning a lot of the more like fulfillment, fun to have, in favor of like, let's just regain stability. And I am just now coming out of this. My husband is like transitioning from being a grad student back into full time work. And like, we're finally in one place, not moving a whole bunch of, moving a whole bunch, which is very destabilizing. There's like, I have some routine in my life. I have a lot of mental health support. I have a lot of physical health support. Like, I manage like chronic illness. That's a big thing for me. And so just like being able to spend the last year in, not to be dramatic, but like recovery of regaining all those baselines. So that I have capacity for other things. I'm like in that like more fun space. Whereas before I was like, oh, shit, like when is this? When am I going to be out of the ambiguity? Every session with my therapist is like, well, we might not have all the answers now. We're going to have to sit in this period. And it's like the worst news for someone like me is like, we're just going to have to sit in the ambiguity a little longer, especially when that period is like a year. Like, that's a lot, you know? Especially for someone who like knows what lights them up, who knows the things that makes them full, but like did not have capacity to be able to keep all those things going. So like right now I'm finally at a point where it's like, ooh, I've got a little space. At the end of the day, my brain is not done. I can now pour into some of this thing, particularly with the work that I've been like wanting to pivot more into. But, full-time day job and a part-time business is a lot on its own. Add in all the family and social and maintaining your household things, and you've got a full plate already, right? And so there's not a lot of room to follow your creativity, even if it still is there in the background. And so I'm finally at a space where I can start to do some of that, which feels really good. And I think also it's that like that level set of going, but pace yourself. Like when you first kind of get that, it's like when you've been thirsty and you've gone on a hike or something and you get like a glass of water, like you don't want to chug two glasses of water. You want some water, but your like system needs some time, right? And that's also, how you dip yourself back into burnout, is like overloading your plate and then needing to go back into that recovery process. So I think it's like I'm in that tempering place where I'm like, okay, Home life is quite stable. How do I make sure that I continue doing the things that made that stable, right? It's like I still like just because my mental health is in a good place doesn't mean I'm now gonna like quit all the things that got me to stability. So I have to like maintain those things while stacking on new things. Which for me, the stacks are coming in like the work and content and those kinds of things that I've like been doing but haven't been putting out there. Um, and it's like it's hard because it's like you're relearning, right? Like I'm like relearning how to write my Instagram posts. I'm like relearning how to like how do I onboard a new client because it's been a minute? Like what are all of those steps that I'm doing? Like it's not fresh. So I'm like new again. Instagram is now like different. Like the Reels game is different. So it's yeah, it's a lot of like going on stories. Cut yourself down to 60 seconds, girl. Like we don't need 5 minutes of you streaming your thoughts. But like, yeah, you're kind of a newbie again. And that's fun, but it's also like annoying when you were a veteran for a minute.
So Outliers, I'm not sure if you hear like the head banging head nods that I have over here. It's like I'm at a rock concert here. I'm just like, you really captured on something where I don't think I knew it was wearing on me, but I didn't know to express it. And I didn't know what it was there. But that feeling of coming back and feeling like a newbie, that right now, ugh, is the thing, right? I'm like I used to make I am prolific. I can get back into to these conversations. I'm like, but something's missing. I'm supposed to do something here. I just can't remember what I'm
I'm
supposed
supposed
to
to bring
do.
it into a call to action of some
Yeah, like
sort, aren't I?
there's a thing here, like yeah, or like I'm like like I think about my email list. I'm like, it's been a while since I really talked to my email list. I'm like, I know that I can like make content again or reach out, but like, how does this go again? And
Yeah.
now I've been gone for a while, so like, how do I come back and like be better? I kind of want to come back like Matthew McConaughey, like it's like I
There's
was
a
an extra.
lot of pressure to come back bigger and better than
Yeah,
ever. There's a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. I like
And
thank you
honestly,
for yeah.
what's gotten me through it is going, we're not going to come back big. We're going to come back like we're in year one, and that has
I
released
love
a
it. I
lot of
love the frame
pressure.
of like you're like I'm a newbie again, and that actually like I
And
think
that
that like that.
judgment is not
Oof,
anything that our community puts on us. It's judgment that we're putting on ourselves.
I like we're gonna start wrapping up, but it's taken me to
Yeah.
a place where I recognize that I left the community that where I was deeply involved in, made a lot of friends. I was like, it's like my coaching community from 2018 onwards, played at like some of the higher levels of the community, so on and so forth. And it had been 4 years since I last was in space with them. And I remember going in and being like, oh, I'm not as far as I want to be. Like they've all gone on, like no one's gonna read, like I don't belong in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like the amount of like people were just like A, they were living their own lives, but
Yeah.
like B, they were just thrilled to have me in there. And I realized like
Mm-hmm.
this whole story that I was creating was not
Yeah.
actually real, at
Yeah.
least not in their minds. And
Right.
the isolation, the separation, the feelings I was feeling, that was on me. So
Yeah.
even now, as we say, like I'm coming in as a newbie, it's like not necessarily. We know what we know. We
Right.
really just now need to like figure out the nuance of what applies. I almost think about my wife with like languages. Like she knows a bunch of different
Yes.
languages. We'll go to
Yes.
different places. She's like, I know Spanish. I know that it's based on a romantic language. What's the nuance here? How do we
Right.
do it
You'll
here?
get back in the swing a lot faster, but you still have to fumble a little bit until you until it
Here's the
lands.
fumbling. Here's the fumbling. Well, I appreciate you here. Outliers, like we really gave ourselves some space in this conversation to talk here. And my thing here is like take some time right now, take your notes, like go through, like digest this here. We all have someone in our life that is going through a season. And if that person right now, if you can, I want you to pick that person in your life who's going through the season right now, who would really benefit from hearing this conversation. And my invitation is to just keep listening, but hit the share button, hit like copy the link, let them know about the episode. Like we have like numbers that are associated with it. It's Shari Balouchi. Like we're having an incredible conversation here. My ask is that you just share this with one other person in your life who needs to hear this conversation today or would really benefit from it. Because yeah, we're there. We're
Yeah.
there. Like let me get there. Sorry, if for anyone who wants to continue going down the journey with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Instagram is my main home at Shari Balouchi. There's links to my website and everything. But yeah, I put out content there regularly. Links to the podcast, all of that is found on my Instagram. Feel free to DM me. I am a real human. I manage all of my own content.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, I love to go deep with people in the DMs and just get to know them a little bit more.
Well, thanks for keeping it real, y'all. You get to see it like firsthand here. And this is still like we're just getting started in that regard. Um, Let me ask you here, what's one insight that you got from this? What's something that you're going to take away as a result of this conversation?
That coaching is not intuition, it is advanced pattern recognition. I
Mm,
love that. Like,
mhm.
love it.
What's something that you're leaving behind here today?
Remembering that it is valuable to be a real human, and there are people out there who are experts who will value that.
Yes. Last question for you here is the time capsule question. And this one here is a message that you're going to leave for yourself to listen to in another 10 years, right? At that time, you'll be 10 years older. You'll have 10 more years of experience. You'll be going through different seasons and your level of well-being and whatever is playing will be at a different place. But there's wisdom that you have right now
Mhm.
that you may want to be reminded of when you listen to this 10 years from now. What's the message that you would leave to yourself?
I probably wouldn't leave wisdom. I would probably just like affirm that I'm really proud of myself. I'm really proud for how I've hung in there. I'm really proud for staying committed. Yeah, I'm just really proud of how I'm taking care of myself. And depending on where I'm at when I listen to this, I hope that I'm still taking care of myself.
Yeah. Well, here's to that. Here's to that. Thank you for bringing well-being. Thank you for bringing taking care of yourself. Thank you for bringing realness into this conversation. Shari, you are someone who sees simplicity on the other side of complexity, and the best part about that is that when that happens, it may not be easy, but it does feel a lot better when it's simple. And I appreciate you being who you are and bringing who you are to this conversation. Thanks for being so outstanding.
Thanks, Niiamah.